Hey everyone, welcome back to HypnoVision Studios. I am your host, Nicholas. Today we're going to be discussing the imagination and sex. Also, we're going to be talking about semen retention and why it's important and healthy for men to practice it. We'll be discussing topics like celibacy, and I'll be also sharing a few of my personal experiences with celibacy and semen retention. But most importantly, I'm going to be opening up about the imagination itself, and I'm going to encourage all of you out there to drop some comments. And as the video goes along, let me know if there's something that resonates with you or an experience that you feel comfortable sharing that is within the YouTube community guidelines. Guys, we have to keep it on some kind of level of classy and a little bit of goof with this. Even though the topic is sex, we have to stay mainstream. So one of the most important things I really want to start off with is simply to say I am grateful for every single one of you. I'm so honored to be able to have this talk and be able to post it on YouTube. But the most important thing when it comes to semen retention is the chemical balance within the male body. This is something that over the past 2 years I have personally practiced and put into process in my own life. So it has absolutely helped me to foster my own imagination. As someone who's already pretty creative as it is, it has only skyrocketed my ideas, my creative aspects. And overall, honestly, as cliche as this sounds, it has given me a vigor and an arousal for life itself. And I just got hit with chills saying that. So my BS meter actually works in opposite, right? So some people can smell BS from a mile away, but when I start telling the truth, I start getting hit with goosebumps. I start having all kinds of little synchronistic events that start happening around me. So yes, absolutely. Semen retention is important because of the chemical factors, right? So just starting this video off this way, I want to make it known that life-giving force that hangs from our fruit, right? It is able to create life. So when it is not used, the body reabsorbs it. And the ratio of blood to semen, what is needed to create new semen, requires more blood, but just a tiny drop of semen can create more blood from it. So it takes more blood to create semen, but semen can create, the ratio is much larger. So we understand that when it circulates back through the body, it goes back into the brain. And they say the brain is the largest sex organ in the whole body, which makes sense because everything starts with a fantasy. It starts with imagination. It starts with a daydream. And we start to give form to that which is in our imagination. And then we start to add the emotion and we arrive finally at the feeling. So the wish fulfilled is the ultimate act of sex, right? The orgasm is the pinnacle. But what most people don't tell you is it is not always about the destination so much as it is the journey. And hopefully, as I go through this video, it will start to make sense to all of you guys. Now, if you're new to my channel, I want to welcome you. If you're new to the topic of semen retention, I've already done about 7 or 8 of these videos, and I will post a playlist in the comments, so make sure you check out the comment section. One of my best performing ones is what they never told you about semen retention. And I also break down the aspects of the Godhead seed and including the transmutation of sexual energy itself. What that means is we are redirecting and rechanneling the sexual energy into a different means. So the best way I can give you an example of this would be to simply say, if you like bodybuilding, if you like working out, for example, if someone makes you mad, instead of retaliating towards that person or taking your anger and frustration out on them, you go hit the weight set at the gym and you have an extra hardcore workout. So that is one way we are taking an emotion of anger and we are channeling it into working out. It is fueling our fire. So we absolutely can take negativity and exchange it, transmute it into a positive outcome. So I don't know if that just picked up on the camera just then, but the little thumbs up just came up on the screen. That's weird. I'll have to edit this out. So Imagination itself is just pure energy. It is the purest form of energy until we give it form with our thoughts and emotions. And this may sound cliche to tie things in from the Bible into the whole idea and concept of sex, but it seems to be taboo in most religious institutions, and most of society acts like it is a terrible thing to talk about sex, when in all actuality we all got here through the means of sex. We all arrived through the portal of a woman's womb. We all are here on earth. All 8 billion of us arrived by the same means. So it's no secret that sex exists. The problem is society has made it into a forbidden desire, a forbidden fruit that we don't talk about, we don't discuss. And when we don't discuss things, there leaves a whole lot of unsaid truths that people have trouble putting pieces together or trying to gain an understanding when it is such a taboo thing to think about or even talk about. I myself grew up in a religious background, so it was absolutely a bit on the taboo side to even discuss sex or even ask questions about sex. Because how could your parents give you information that they don't have themselves? And perhaps even they could be embarrassed about the conversation. So take that with a grain of salt. Not everybody grew up in that same type scenario. So I know that some of you guys out there may have, and it may resonate with you, and other people it may not. But semen retention itself is the act of abstaining from all forms of sexual activity. And it aims to desexualize the mind, because this deals with our sensory input. We have our 5 senses, right? We have our taste, touch, smell, hearing, and vision. So there's 5 senses that give us those 5 dimensions of understanding. And when we shut down our sensory input and we start to, like, if you have a porn addiction, for example, and you put porn away, you put it on the shelf for 30 days, you are desensitizing your mind, because you are no longer introducing yourself to the mental images, right? So we are relying very heavy on the visual sensations when we watch porn. We start to substitute our imagination for visual images on a screen. The other sensory is our hearing, right? So we are leaving out 3 of the 5 senses when we watch porn. Not to mention that most of the titles are kind of gross. Most of them have some kind of family weirdness associated with them. Brother, sister, mother, incest type stuff. And it's really, so you understand why it's not healthy for just a lot of different reasons. But you start to become into a habit, a routine. It's habitual to look at porn just to have an orgasm. So that's one of the other reasons why semen retention is so important, because if we are continuously ejaculating, we are leaking out our life force fluid, and there is no conception, there's no child being born from this, and the amount of pleasure is self-pleasure, and we are losing our life force, which takes even more blood to make up and recreate new semen. So your body is always in a state of creation. It is always in a state of cycles of life and death. The cells in your body are always being reborn, and they're always dying. So we need that life-giving force to create new blood. And let's be honest, guys, for just a minute. If you don't know how this process works, right, you may have heard the terminology washed by the blood, and it is in a religious context. But what they do not tell you is that it is completely an inside job. We understand that Jesus Christ, as a mainstream character, died on the cross for our sins, and we are forgiven, and he is our Savior. But what they do not tell you is that thorn, where all the pictures show him bleeding with the thorn of crowns, is actually symbolic for what is happening inside of the mind, right? Jesus had 12 disciples. We have 12 cranial nerves. We have 12 calendar months in the year. We also have 12 zodiac signs. But the whole concept of the wash by the blood happens internally. because inside of the biology of a male, that seed, that semen, right, it contains the life-giving force, and it also contains consciousness. It is always ascending and descending on a 29.5 day cycle within the body. So every 29.5 days, that seed travels back up the spinal cord, and that fluid is known as the Christos. This is where we derive the last name of Jesus Christ, Christos, because it is known as the anointed oil. This oil travels back up our spinal cord, back into the brain, eventually making its way to the pituitary gland and the pineal gland. And there's a chemical reaction that is happening because the pineal gland contains crystals that are piezoelectric, meaning they are releasing electrical pulses, and the contact between the pituitary gland and the electricity creates plasma. And this plasma is where we get the new blood and the understanding of washing of the blood. So this is actually a biological thing that is happening inside of the body, but we also know this story as a story of Jesus. And the whole idea of 3 days in the tomb, well, guess what? That seed spends 3 days in between the pituitary gland and the pineal gland before it eventually makes its way back down. And that's very interesting when you think about it, guys. Some of you out there may know a little bit about semen retention. I've had a lot of questions over the past 2 years about it. Does it make you a ladies' man? Does it make you this and that? Well, honestly and truthfully, I think that it brings out the more authentic nature of any man who is practicing it. So yes, it can make you a ladies' man if that is where your dominant thoughts are, right? If that is where your awareness of your consciousness is to be a ladies' man, then perhaps, yes, you would have some luck on that. I have seen other people say that they have spent 2 or 3 years practicing semen retention and they cannot tell a difference. So there is also the aspect of self-talk, self-image. But one of the most important things that it taught me was that we can take any experience and make it bad through our imagination. So again, I will circle that back around to imagination being pure energy. And when we start to charge it with our emotions, we start to see a thought in a particular filter, right? So if I'm in a bad mood and I read words off of this, then I'm going to read them through the filter of being in a bad mood versus a good mood. So for some people, they can experience no change after practicing semen retention. For others, they absolutely have come back and said that, yeah, it made me a ladies' man. But other people, it made me like more in tuned and aroused for life and actually accomplishing goals and setting goals and setting the bar higher for myself and learning and growing. So for me, that was not one of the things I did semen retention for. So in that regard, I don't feel like it made me more of a ladies' man. However, I do feel like it made it easier for me to articulate myself, be more open about my feelings and my emotions. And so, yes, in that way, it does make it easier to talk to the opposite gender. Again, guys, take that with a grain of salt because really everybody's going to have a different experience about it. So what is the difference between fantasy and desire itself? Because desire is what is the birth of fantasy, or is it the other way around? Let's think about this for just a minute. What is happening in the imagination when we become aroused? What is the initial point that caused that arousal? Was it a thought that we have? Was it an image that we seen? Or was it simply our body's primal language talking to us through arousal? So there are many different things that can happen inside of the body that, I can only speak from my experience firsthand before semen retention and after semen retention, and the difference in understanding of my own body through the male aspect. So as someone who has openly talked about having porn addiction, right? So that is one of the biggest things that I think most men are not comfortable opening up about. There are also the paradigms where if you have a partner, they can become extremely insecure if they know that you watch porn, if they know that you are masturbating while watching porn. There can be this sense of betrayal, this sense of cheating. But let's be completely 100% honest. Women have fantasies too. Even if they're in a relationship, women fantasize about sex. So this is one of those things where I understand it's a slippery slope, and every situation is going to have its own individual variance to it. So I don't want to blanket statement this concept, but it does happen, or vice versa, where someone is so ashamed of something that they start to hide it, right? And then it becomes, as I said earlier, taboo. We're not allowed to talk about it. We're not allowed to discuss it. But internally, because of the shame, right? Shame is another emotion that creates a feeling within the body. Shame lowers the vibration of the feeling. So we can start to tell ourselves that we don't deserve X, Y, and Z. Or for somebody like myself that had a religious background, it is the act of having the thought itself is just as sinful as actually carrying out the action. So for me, through semen retention and the understanding of washing of the blood, I had a lot of internal conflict that I had to sit with until it no longer hurt, until it no longer was something that was creating conflict within myself. And I started to embrace myself. I started to embrace the different imaginative thoughts that I have. And actually, I have some props and stuff that I built in my studio over here that are related to sex, they do have a multi-function purpose to them. So no, I'm not building a 50 Shades of Grey down here in my basement, but I have allowed myself to simply explore and be curious about the different things in my imagination. And I've actually started to learn that there were certain things that I gravitated towards, but felt like I didn't deserve. And that was simply based around different beliefs. So if we feel insecure, like if we think of ourselves as not deserving, I'll give you a good example. For most women out here, and I'm sure that if there are any women out here, you could reinforce this comment. You feel that you have to live up to the standard of the woman in the porn scenes. So if I were to not take up for a guy, but take up for men in general, I would say that it's not so much about her as it is men are not very good at communicating the scenery, right? Because of the imagination and being able to express his emotions and feelings. So there is a bit of insecurity on both sides that is happening here. He's not secure enough to say like, hey, this is a fantasy I have inside of my imagination and I want to play this out with you, like role play. For her, she is trying to do what he is seeing in the video, look like what he is seeing in the video, sound like what he is seeing in the video. So porn becomes this third party, so to speak, this medium that is in between partnership or union between two people. And it is a form of desensitizing, but it is also a form of communication that is in between two people. So there's a lot of guesswork, right? And this is where some of the insecurities come from. Some people who watch porn masturbate way too much. Again, this goes back to semen retention and the importance of the chemical balance, right? Because what happens when we stop masturbating and we stop having sex for an extended amount of time? I've had some people ask me about semen retention after 30 days. When do you start to notice the benefits and the different things that happen during semen retention? And to be honest, it takes a little bit longer than just 30 days. It is a 29.5 day cycle. However, the timing of when that starts and stops is on your body's own individual cycle. And most people look to their birth charts to figure this out because your moon sign or your sun sign is going to have a lot to do with this. So, for example, I have a Capricorn sun with a Pisces moon. So I would track my cycle by my birth chart. And for 3 days before and 3 days after, I have a full moon in Pisces, or either any of the other full moons for that matter. I want to make sure that I'm not releasing my semen during a full moon. Why? Because it affects the water. So let me explain this. We know that the moon can affect the tides. We know that the body is 70 to 80% of water. So it's logical to think that the moon can affect the water that is inside of our body. We are also made up of many different elements of the earth. So magnetism is one of these things. The magnetic pull, right? That's what they say is happening because of the tidal shift. It's all magnetic. So it stands to reason that the moon cycles do affect the chemical makeups in the body. Not just the water, but the chemistry itself. So we start to gain a very different understanding that sex itself, on a rudimentary level, yes, it's for the purpose of recreation, right? To create another life or conception. On the other hand, through the whole concepts of marriage and religion, that is companionship. It's a little bit of both. But when a man learns the difference between orgasm and ejaculation, and he starts to practice being able to have an orgasm without completely going to the point of ejaculation, then he can start to enjoy sex more naturally and a lot longer. That is probably one of the biggest keys, because I'm sure that's probably a huge complaint for a lot of people, that it is most men, like the joke that I've always heard is that most men don't last very long. And so if he can go longer, then it's more enjoyable. The other benefit of this is the physical activity that comes from it. So yes, you're getting your heart rate up, you're moving around. So there's a lot of benefit to actually practicing semen retention itself, and then moving eventually to having a partner who understands the importance of not ejaculating every single time you have sex. There are a lot of misconceptions out there when it comes to semen retention and nofap and even celibacy. Because I've been asked, does celibacy mean you can't kiss a person? You can't, those type things, honestly, to me, I don't really subscribe to, because semen retention, automatically by default, you're celibate, right? Because if you're not having sex, by default, you're celibate. That's really not a choice of whether you're actively looking for someone or you're not. So for me, I think that's an individual person's decision of what exactly constitutes as sex when it comes to celibacy. Now, if you're a really highly religious and want to stick to a certain belief set around that, then that's fine. That's that's what you believe. That's part of your belief system. So of course, do what feels right there. But honestly, when it just comes to the chemical makeup, right? And this does go back to our nervous system. And I wear the cadeus around my neck because it symbolizes the nervous system itself. So once we start to replenish the semen, the life force within us, we start to change our nervous system, and we start to get a little bit of time through a couple cycles of the body retaining. It starts to renew the mind. And when we renew the mind and we're releasing new blood back into the brain, we are creating new blood cells. We are also the washing part, right? We are removing the toxins, the old brain cells in the mind. So there's a lot of benefit that comes from this. The mental clarity is another thing, because the more we get to a nervous system reset or a balance of equilibrium within the nervous system, the more clear our mentality is going to be. And I don't know anybody that would say that's a bad thing. If I can be smarter by simply retaining for a few months, then it's worth it all day long. There's value in it all day long. And I said this before, and when a man realizes that semen is the most valuable thing that he has in his body, he will not think twice about being wasteful with his life-giving force. I even heard a joke once about, men carry their babies in liquid form. Take that with a grain of salt, guys. So sexual transmutation, again, is transmuting the energy into something else. For me, I started to do a lot of romantic stories, a lot of dabbling with erotic stories also, which over time I have kind of redefined, for myself. But one of the themes that I had in one of my stories for erotic stories was I'm taking away one of your senses. And it was very symbolic for me because it was not just about sensory play, but it was taking away the woman's senses because she needs to feel beautiful, sexy, attractive, erotic. She wants to feel these things without second guessing what her sensory input is telling her. So blindfolding her, right, was removing one of the 5 senses that we dominantly use more than any other. We use our eyesight and rely on our eyesight more than any other sensory input that we have, more than hearing, more than smell, more than touch. It is what we are seeing with our eyes that we rely on so heavy. So if I can remove your senses through a story and make you blind and tell you that you're beautiful, make you feel my presence, right? And I'm getting chills just thinking about this. If I can make you feel these things, then it has shifted you internally and you're no longer thinking like, oh, I can't be like that girl in the video. I can't be like that girl in the movie. I can't be like this popular girl that all the guys are in her inbox. So again, guys, it brings us back to the emotional state of our being. And when we start to understand that our thoughts that are coming from our imagination is directly affecting our emotions, and when we are not aware, then we are not able to make a conscious choice to say like, hey, I don't like this thought, so I don't want to give it any energy. Some people understand this and other people don't. So whether it's good or bad, if we have a thought and then we start to add the emotion to it, we having a reaction to a thought. It's either good or bad. If we have a bad reaction to a thought and then it becomes an intensity to it, we are starting to have an emotional reaction to a logical thought. So take that with a grain of salt, guys, because it's all about the inner atmosphere of our nervous system, our inner feelings, what it is that is going on inside of our body at any given time. And if our attention is out there in the outside world, we may not be in touch with our own emotions, our own feelings. And if we live emotionally attached to the past, then it's hard for us to be present. Our body can be present, but we are dissociated from the present moment and gone through imagination emotionally into the past. So being present is very important when it comes to sex in general, right? We want to be present with our partner. We want to be present for the experience. We want to be a part of the experience. We want it to be a good experience. So visualizing when it comes to imagination is very healthy, on the contrary to what some people may have been told. I, for one, with that religious background, was like, I can't have these thoughts because I'll go to hell. It was one of those type things. And so we become, as I said earlier, full of shame because of things that we have done, things that we experienced, or either things that have happened to us that were against our will maybe. So I want to acknowledge that, but it does affect us. So being able to just accept the fact that we all have thoughts, we all have desires, we all have fantasies, and we all daydream about sex. Like just that admitting it is a big step forward in being able to have open discussion about insecurities. It helps to have open discussions about different desires. One of the things that I went through, because also on my semen retention journey, I have done a bunch of journaling, which was also a form of healing. So there were like for example, I have a a kink that I was just so perplexed. Why do I spend so much time thinking about someone sitting on my face? Why is this such a huge thing in my life? And that was the key, guys. It was the why part. If you watch some of the biggest motivational speakers, they always talk about the why. The why is the factor for what we do. So there must be a reason, or either something that happened in my childhood that causes me to want to relive this experience. And I'm either focusing on the fact that it is not in my life, as in I am focusing on a lack, or either I have formed some kind of emotional obsession with this, right? Some people will say, I don't know why I do the things I do. I can't stop. It's just who I am. I understand the statement on surface level, but I also know that anything is possible. So to assume that that is just how you are and that is how things will always be, and you just must settle and accept it as status quo, is a self-denial. It is a self-lie, regardless if you think that's just how you are, because anything is possible. And if you can get yourself out of that rut and step out of yourself and kind of turn around and look back at yourself and ask that why do I feel this way about X, Y, and Z? So for me, I learned a lot through BDSM, the whole idea of bondage and being able to submit to a partner, or to be submissive in different aspects. It doesn't mean being a weak man. It doesn't mean like the homophobia of things. It is just a form of submission to someone else. And in some ways, I think on a very deep primal level, we all want that nurturing, right? So that helped me to understand some of the aspects of nurturing. Like there is a whole world once you step into the topic of BDSM. There's just it's a whole community out there of people, but at the same time, it taught me a lot on the psychological side of things, the why this happens, the why for that reason. So sex begins in the mind long before it begins in the body, and that really comes from the imagination. It truly is the purest form of energy, and it gets transmuted into desire and ultimately becomes a belief and is acted out through action. So thought becomes an action only through belief. That's how we bring life to it. And that's very interesting, to be able to bring the whole idea of semen retention, the understanding of the religious points of view of this, and the fact that it does seem, really taboo, but also at the same time, everybody does it, but nobody wants to be honest about certain aspects of it. The health aspect of not watching porn, but actually actively using your imagination. And so one of the other topics that I see come up associated with this is masturbation itself. If you go and Google, for example, is it healthy, or how many times a month should a guy ejaculate, you will find a wide range of answers out there. So it can be confusing. So I would say for anyone, it is always a individual choice that you have to make for yourself. But the whole idea of semen retention is how long you desire to practice it. If it is just something that you want to experience for one time, then going 30, 40, 60 days is really not that big of a deal. Some people think, oh, well, I'll never have sex again in my life. And I actually faced that fear early on because I knew that what I was doing was completely cutting off myself and trying to like unwire the things in my head and rewire things. So that meant to like completely just control alt delete my memory bank in my imagination. So there was that fear of just letting go. And that was a real fear for me. And I faced it like, well, what if I never have sex again? So I understand where people might have that as an initial thought, right? Like, well, I can't practice that because I don't want to give up having sex, or I'm in a relationship. And if I do that, it could ruin the relationship. There are many reasons where it could be beneficial to a relationship, especially if it helps you to be able to open up and articulate yourself and be more secure in communicating your emotions and your feelings and desires. So there are things that could be helpful in that way, not to mention the mental clarity you gain from it and the resetting of your chemicals. So that helps you turn back the body, the mental pharmacy and the biological pharmacy of the life creating force. It is all alchemy. It is creation, right? So, guys, there's a lot of cool stuff when you start to really understand that everything is at its root level has a sexual condens. I'll have to cut that out. It's interesting how everything at the root level has a sense of sexual notation to it. The male and the female, right? Everything that has to be reproduced first has to be copied. So copy paste. Our DNA is in pretty much that way. We pass it down, we imprint it. It is something that is inside of us all. It is something that we have flowing through us. So it is interesting to say the least. If you are someone that has practiced semen retention and then had a relapse, and then you go for another streak of semen retention, that is a lesson, right? Because it teaches you during that time where you relapse, you feel bad for yourself. Not just bad for yourself, but you feel like you failed at something. But then it tells you, it gives you indication of the feeling, right? You don't want to feel this way again, so you know the next time around. But for me, after I had went down the road for a certain amount of period, I started to have the fear of releasing, because the aspect of masturbation and when it comes to semen retention, right? This really comes down to intention. What is the intention? Is it just simply for pleasure? Is this a slippery slope back into a porn addiction? Or am I starting to prepare myself for the eventual dating again, or finding a partner, or being active with my partner again? So there are different reasons why someone who practices semen retention would also be masturbating. Because if it is for one of those reasons, some of the reasons are good. Like if you're anticipating being with a partner, you want to, firstly, you want to make sure everything's working. Secondly, you want to kind of build your stamina up in that sense. So intentions really matter when it comes to this. If it's one of those things where you just get horny and you masturbate and then you have a relapse because you started watching porn, or it just felt too good and you couldn't stop, then yeah, that's a self-discipline thing. So again, the mind is where it all comes from. You don't have sex without first having a thought. So when it comes to cheating in relationships, this is a very slippery slope that I don't think will ever get answered as long as mankind exists on this earth. There will always be someone who takes that paradigm and will just hold on to it and not be able to let it go. But at the same time, recognizing the importance of that discussion itself, it has to be had. It has to be talked about if you're active with someone or not, but planning to be active with them. So there's a lot of different variables out there when it comes to sex and why people are having sex and what the purpose of it even is, other than at its most root level to recreate life. secondary, it is companionship, it is connection, it is intimacy. And some people just want the orgasm and they don't want any of the other stuff. So there are many different reasons why people have sex. So be smart about that, guys. I don't have to tell you, like you already know. So try not to make a video weird, but I feel like I'm making it weird right now because it's completely honest, it's completely genuine, and most of the time those are the ones that stand out. So guys, I am very grateful for all of you, and I want you to know that the feeling is truly secret. So when you visualize and you want to foster your imagination in a sexual way, we want to think of details, right? So if I'm going to write a story that would lead to sexual activity, like through erotic writing or romance writing, then I want to be highly detailed in my descriptions, right? So I want to visualize the woman that I'm writing about. I want to, in full detail, not just like, well, she had a big butt or she had big breasts. No, it is how she saw him, how she, from her point of view, viewed him, what she finds attractive in him. But the other side of that also, being able to admit that he feels nervous because he is so attracted to her and that he wants to be as perfect as possible, which is also the same thing that she feels insecure about. So you start to understand through like erotic writing that, the whole idea, like I've seen people argue over this, and I'm getting chills because I know I'm getting ready to nail this on the head, right? The fact that we have masculine and feminine aspects within each and every one of us. Some people are like, no, I'm a dude. Like there's no way I have feminine aspects in me. But we all have it, right? Because it is half of mom's nervous system, half of dad's nervous system. And this has been passed down through generations and generations. So it is a whole generational system within your body. But still within you is that male and female aspect. So when I go into writing and I'm writing stories for my YouTube channel or just writing stories in general for myself, and there's two characters in there, even if I add a third or fourth character in there, they are still different aspects of my own imagination. So are you gay because you visualize another man in your imagination? And I say this lightly and respectfully, like no offense to anyone out there. I feel quite comfortable saying it because I hope that you understand the context. If we imagine things, that does not necessarily make something real, right? It is real in our imaginative sense. It is real in our feeling, but that doesn't mean that physically it is real. It is not until it becomes into your reality physically that something has manifested. So when I write stories, I'm using this as an example for you guys. So because some people feel shameful, they actually want to know more, they want to open up, but they feel shameful about this because it does require you to be descriptive in detail. And the whole idea of you're just a pervert or this perversion. So we got to keep this classy, which through the storytelling is pretty much the most classy way that you can tell it, because you're not just describing the act of having sex, you're describing everything that led up to it. The little subtle cues, the soft nudges, or either moments where they touched each other and there was a thought, or they touched each other and she felt this and he felt that. So we are building a movie that is leading us to the scene that is the act. So you are having in your imagination, right, both aspects of him and her within your own imagination. And when you can find partners that you can imagine with, right, we want to use our imagination and role play out a scene. That is how you can take that into a practice with a partner and it becomes a fun, spiced up event to try again. So you could go 30 days practice semen retention, or go 2 months, and during that time be starting to write ideas for role plays that you want to try. And then eventually, if you do have a partner after the 2 months is up, you could ease back into it with role play. There are so many different ways that you can reunite your whole reproductive system and get those chemicals flowing again, get that blood flowing again. There's energy always flowing through our bodies. It can never be destroyed. It can only transform. So we can transform from the inside and renew ourselves with new life by understanding the true meaning of washing of the blood. And we can have new life that way, from the inside out. And guys, I appreciate you so much, and I will see you on the next video. Please make sure you drop some comments, because I know they're going to be interesting. I know I rambled a little bit, and so I'm going to leave you on that note.